What is up, guys? What is up? What is up? What is up? What is up? Let's go ahead and have a little discussion today. I made a video 2 days ago. My cell phone corrupted the video. I'm not really sure why. It corrupted that video and probably 30 other pictures. So I'm not really sure what's going on with my phone. So I'm sorry. And it was a good video too, but it's just me ranting for 12 minutes. So it's whatever. Anyways, today's video is going to be about type rating. Well, I should say what to expect once you get hired by an airline. Now, I've only been hired by one airline, and every airline's kind of different, especially when you're talking 121 versus 135. So I'm going to be speaking from the 135 experience and the experience that I had at Jet Suite personally. But the same thing, give or take a few details, should apply to wherever you're going. So these questions actually came from one of our subscribers. Posted these questions 2 months ago, and I'm just now seeing them. So I'm gonna kind of go through them and talk about them. So when you first get hired by an airline, you're gonna go to this thing called Indoctrination. Basically, what this is it's your time. Usually, let me clarify. Usually, Indoc happens before your actual type rating. So Indoc, it's going to be where you go to learn about company standards, SOPs, standard operating procedures, GOMs, general operating manual, op specs, operation specifications, just stuff like that. And it's basically just a bunch of rules that say what you can and cannot do while flying under the Jet Suite or the SkyWest or the Compass or the Delta or the American Airlines name, right? That's pretty much all it is. Indoc, how long it takes depends. Indoc at Jet Suite's about a week. At some airlines, I've heard it's about a month. So it really depends on what airline you're going to. And once you get hired, your recruiter should be able to tell you how long you can expect to be in Indoc. So anyways, once you get to Indoc, that's usually when you can pick out the base that you want. I know for Jet Suite, you apply for the base that you want in the first place. So if you go to our website right now, you're gonna see pilots for Phoenix, pilots for Burbank, pilots for Vegas. Those are basically the bases that we have open right now. And so you apply to say if you want to work in Phoenix, you apply for the Phoenix pilot position, and then essentially if you get hired, that's on the assumption that you're going to be working at Phoenix. With some airlines though, you don't actually pick your base until Indoc, and that's when they give you the options and they say, hey, you can be a 737 FO in Phoenix, or you can be an A321 FO in LA, or you can be a 77 FO in Detroit, right? So that's basically, you go there, you pick, and you learn about the company rules. After you finish Indoc, you start running into your type rating, right? And your type rating is where you go to get trained on the jet that you fly. Type rating usually takes about a month. So depending upon the company that you work for, you're either going to get an SIC or a PIC type rating. And depending upon if you meet the minimums or not, you're probably going to go in and get you're going to have an ATP check ride as well. So what Jet Suite does is they combine, to my understanding, your PIC check ride, PIC type rating for the ERJ 135 and your ATP type check ride, I should say, into one sim, I believe. I haven't actually done it yet, so I'm not too sure, but from my understanding, that's how it works. At other airlines, I believe that you do your ATP check ride, and then once you pass that, you do your type rating, right? Because it's if you can't pass your ATP check ride, there's no point in us even giving you a type rating. So a lot of my friends, when they did their type rate, their ATP certificate, their airline sent them to Las Vegas and had them do sims in an A320, and that was essentially their ATP check ride, right? They did it in an A320 sim. Following that, you pass your ATP, you go to type rating, and type ratings also. So I would say your ATP ride's probably about a month, and then your type rating is about a month. So altogether, it's about 2 months. Your type rating is where you're going to learn about the plane, right? So that's going to be you sitting in ground school. There's a lot of ground school. It's probably 2 weeks of ground school, maybe 3 weeks of ground school. And you're just sitting there, you're learning about the plane, you're doing tests about the plane, You're learning your limitations about the plane, what you can and cannot do in the plane, how your company says you should operate this plane, what your flows are for the plane, what approaches the plane can and cannot shoot, limitations on the engines, limitations on your speed, limitation on altitude, pressurization, what's the max cabin pressure differential you can have, can you overpressurize, and if so, by how much, what happens if you have an emergency and the engine catches fire, if your landing gear doesn't come down, if the pressurization gets dumped. I mean, it's going to be so much stuff just thrown at you, right? So that's going to be the type rating. After you go through the ground part of type rating, you will go into your sims. Sims are just like before. You're going to hop in and you're going to work on your flows. So that's basically, depending upon the flight school that you came from, you may or may not have flows, right? In flight schools, at least the ones that I came from, it was you ran through your checklist, and you, as you're reading through your checklist, you were doing it. So that's a read and do checklist, right? At the airlines, though, it's different. You memorize flows for each stage of flight. So we have a before start flow, an after start flow, a before takeoff flow, a before landing flow, an after landing flow, a shutdown flow, and an airplane turn off flow, basically. And so what you do is you memorize all these different flows, and then you use your checklist to verify that you got everything, right? So you have a read and do checklist and like a do and verify checklist. You do it and then you verify it with the checklist, right? So you're going to learn your flows. That's probably going to be one of the hardest parts of your type rating, is learning the flows. Eventually it becomes muscle memory, so it sounds like a lot right now, and when you're in the sim it's going to seem like a lot, but eventually it's going to be muscle memory, right? You're going to be like boom, 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 done, boom, 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 done, right? Memory. For me, it took about 100 hours on the plane to get to the point where it was like boom, 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 and occasionally I still kind of stumble. Like I'll do if I haven't flown in like a week, like I'll run through a flow and like my hand will move to a button before it should, and I'm like, oh wait, let me just grab this, boom, 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 and then go back to where it is. But like after the first flight, you get it back. So that'll come in time. The other thing that you're going to be doing in the sim is a lot of emergency procedures. So you're going to get a lot of B1 cuts. You're going to get a lot of engine failures. You're going to get a lot of fires. You're going to get a lot of pressurization. I mean, they're going to just throw stuff at you, and you're going to be with somebody else from your class, your sim partner, and you guys are going to be working through this issue, right? So whenever we have an emergency inside the plane, one of two things happen. Sometimes both. We have memory items, right? Just like in the Cessna or the Somewhat you've been flying. And if something happens, we run this memory item. And then after that memory item's done, we pull out our QRH. QRH, Quebec Romeo Hotel, stands for Quick Resource Handbook. All right, and basically what this is you open up this book and you go to a tab, and like there's like, in our plan, I think it's like 12 or 13 tabs, and it's like there's a tab for engines, and then there's a tab for fuel system, and then there's a tab for flight controls, and then there's a tab for, there's a tab for all the major things in the airplane, right? So let's say there's also a tab for fire. So let's say you have a fire, right? You have engine fire. What you're going to do is you're going to go to the tab for fire, and then you're going to look and you're going to say engine fire, engine fire, engine fire. Oh, okay, here's the engine fire QRH. So then you go to that list, and it's going to say, okay, well, first of all, did you run your memory items? Yes, I did. All right, cool. Here's what you do now. And basically, it's a checklist telling us what to do to like secure the engine, or to like see what's going on with it, right? So that's going to be a big part of it. Along with that, you're going to be doing the stuff that you've been doing in your flight school, right? So that's going to be steep turns, unusual attitudes, stalls, just like you were doing this in your flight school. If you were a CFI, it's going to be easy for you. You're going to be shooting some practice approaches. Recommendations for type rating. Usually when I did my initial type rating, I pretty much did the whole thing without autopilot. And I highly recommend that you guys do that, because you want to get a feel for the plane as close as you can while you're in the sim, and you want to fine-tune your flying skills while you're in the sim, right? So if you mess up in the sim, that's cool, like whatever, but you don't want to be messing up on IOE, right? And we'll get to that part. I'll tell you what IOE is in a second. So when you do your type rating or you're training for your airline, hand fly as much as you can in the sim. For me, it got to the point where they said, Jay, we need you to turn on the autopilot so you can prove that you know how to use the autopilot. Autopilot's easy. It is so easy to use. I mean, hop on Flight Simulator and run through it. It's easy. Autopilot is easy. It's cake. It's not that hard. But they had to make sure I knew how to use it. So I highly recommend that you guys hand fly as much as you possibly can. Now, wait. For the check ride, don't get cocky, use your autopilot. Because it makes it way easier. I know for me personally, one of the things that I've seen really catches people, and it caught me too the first time I did it, is when you do a single engine approach, right? So basically on a single engine approach, what normally happens is when you take off and you run out your airplane's flows, you trim in rudder to account for that pressure that you need. So if your right engine goes out, right, the plane is going to pull to the left. All right, so the plane's going to pull to the left because that nose is, the plane's going to pull to the right. I'm over here doing this and I'm saying left. The plane's going to pull to the right. And since it's pulling to the right, you're going to need to put it in left rudder, right? Now, using your muscle to hold in that left rudder is going to get tiring. So what a lot of guys do is they put in trim, right? And when they are at 200 knots or whatever and they put in that amount of trim, it holds fine. But then what happens is they put on autopilot, right? And the plane's stable, so they don't have to worry about the trim readjusting it, right? But what you need to remember is the trim input that you put in is only good for that airspeed. And the further that you get away from that airspeed, the less that trim is going to do you any good, right? So what happens is guys have autopilot on, and they're getting ready to shoot this approach, and they have trim for the rudder set for where it was when it was doing 200 knots. And what happens is when they start bringing down flaps, and they start bringing down gear, and they start slowing down to approach speed, the plane is starting to fly uncoordinated. And because of this, the autopilot is compensating. Now, our autopilots do not necessarily control the rudder. Yours might. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but your plane might not apply to you. But if your plane's autopilot does not control the rudders, what happens is, as you start slowing down, the plane's gonna be like, dude, like you're flying uncoordinated, but I'm gonna try my best to keep us, doing what we gotta do. So sometimes the plane will put in a ton of rudder, aileron trim, and a ton of aileron, and it's like struggling, and then all of a sudden, autopilot just kicks off, says, you know what, I can't do it anymore. So then you're shooting this approach, you're going down to minimums, and then all of a sudden, you're probably on ILS. All of a sudden, the plane starts banking. You might be like 1,500 feet in the air. You go full deflection on both your localizer and your glide slope, and boom, you busted your check ride. So what I do is when I do a single engine approach in the sim, normally what I do, because I don't like keeping track of the rudder, because when I apply trim to an airplane, I need to feel what the airplane is doing, right? And I can't feel what the airplane is doing when the autopilot's on, I mean, you can, but you can't fine tune it like you need to. So what I do personally is when I'm doing a single engine approach, I put on autopilot and I leave trim like neutral for the rudder, and I just use my muscles to control that, the rudder. So that way I don't forget about it and it keeps me engaged. And the faster you go, the less rudder trim you're gonna need. So like once you're around like 200 knots or so, and of course that number is depending upon the airplane that you fly, but once you get faster, you're not gonna need to hold in as much rudder. But once you start slowing down, you're gonna need more and more rudder to stay coordinated. So that's my way of doing it, and every time I do it that way, I never have an unstable approach when I shoot single engine approaches. So that's just my tip. But now let's get into the questions from our commenters. So first one is, can you ask or get extra flying time in a sim somewhere like for your type jet, or for your type of jet? So let's say you guys are struggling in the sim, right? You need more time prior to your check ride. It depends upon the company. Jet Suite X will work with you. I know that for sure. If you are struggling and you need extra time in the sim, we will normally give it to you. However, other airlines may not be so forgiving. I know airlines where basically if you're not doing the sim, they kick you out and you're gone, just like that. So it really depends upon the airline that you're working for. I can only speak to Jet Suite, and at Jet Suite, for the most part, if you're trying but you need just a little bit extra time, they're happy to give it to you. Just understand that the company has to pay for that extra sim time, and sim time can be expensive. Like I think it's like a few grand an hour, depending upon the planet you're flying. So just be aware of that. Weak spots. If you know you have weak spots, work on those in your sim during your normal lesson, right? So if you know that you're kind of bad at shooting approaches without autopilot, I would recommend that you turn off autopilot and start shooting approaches and hand flying approaches, right? If you know that you have a bad scan when you're doing your instruments, practice your scan, right? And get used to how you can scan in that particular plane, right? When you go over your time, so like basically, when you go in for your type rating, you have an allotted amount of time in the sim, the whole type rating. So maybe it's 20 hours, maybe it's 40 hours, I don't know. But you have an allotted amount of time, right? Once you use all that time, the company has to pay extra, right? So let's say you have 20 hours of sim time that you can use at your type rating, right? Basically what happens is the company has a contract that says, all right, for these 20 hours of sim time, we're gonna pay you 30 grand. But then if you need 21 hours, 22 hours, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27 hours, those are all extra hours the company is paying for, right? And so remember, it's a few G's per extra hour that you need, depending upon your type rating. So whether or not the company decides to give you that extra time is really dependent upon them, right? And I really can't say if American will, I can't say if Southwest will, I can't say if SkyWest will, because I never flown for them. But I will say that Jet Suite X will give you some extra time if you need it. And they will pay for it. But if at some point with any other airline, man, if you can't keep up, they're gonna have to drop you, so just remember that. Let's see, the other question is, what company? I think, so the other question is essentially, if if you are doing your training and you pass it, but you still don't feel comfortable in the plane, will the company allow you to take more sim time? I'd imagine not. If you're passing your check rides and you're passing your sims, I would not imagine that they're going to give you extra time because you don't feel comfortable. What will likely happen is when you get to IOE, initial operating experience, what it stands for, I believe, that's when you can use that time to get more comfortable in the plane. So basically, once you pass your type rating, you pass your ATP check ride, you're going to go into IOE. And IOE is when you'll fly with a check airman, right? Check airman from your airline. And it's basically a captain who's been designated by the airline and the FAA to fly and train new guys, right? So IOE, first day of IOE, your IOE captain, at least a jet suite, will probably do a lot of the work, right? Just so you can kind of get used to the plane, get used to the feel of the plane, all that jazz. As you progress through IOE, you'll get more and more responsibilities, and the goal is by the end of IOE that you should be totally safe to fly on your own. Now here's the thing, some airlines are very, 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 very strict about IOE. If you don't do good during IOE, they'll kick you out, right? But the flip side to that is, normally if you make it to IOE and you're not doing good, they have a lot of incentive to keep working with you, right? Because by this point, they've already dumped like 50 grand into you, maybe even more than that. So they don't want to just throw away 50 grand. They're going to try to work with you, right? But IOE, it's highly recommended that you guys go in there and you know your flows. You know your flows. The biggest thing that's going to piss a IOE captain off is if you don't know your flows. So know your flows. Know the plane, know your limitations. And of course, there's going to be some stuff that you forget between the time that you finish your type rating and the time that you go into IOE. I've seen it at Jet Suite, it's probably about a month between the two. And that's probably the case in most airlines because it's just so many new guys coming in. So of course some things are going to be forgotten, but for the most part, remember as much as you can. IOE captains are there to train you, so if you are weak on stuff or if you have questions about things, it's a great time to start asking questions, and it's a great time to start making mistakes. Don't look stupid, of course, but make mistakes, ask questions, say, hey, if I do this, what happens? If I do that, what happens? Try different techniques. You'll likely fly with different IOE captains. Each IOE captain is going to have their own technique on how they do certain things. I recommend that you guys take in all those techniques and try all of their techniques, and then use whatever technique you find is best, or merge them all to create your own technique. Example being at Jet Suite, every guy kind of has a different way they land the plane, right? And so I got to see different guys landing the plane different ways because I flew with a variety of IOE captains. And that allowed me to kind of say, hey, all right, I like how you did this and that, but I didn't like how he did this and that. And I liked how this guy did this and that, but I did not care for how he did these two things. So then I can say, I'm going to pull this and this and this and this, and now I can create my own. Sorry. And now I can create my own landing technique, right? So after you pass IOE can be 5 days long, it could be 1 day long, it could be 3 days. Actually, I take that back. If you are working a 121 airline, there is a legal amount of time you have to be in IOE. However, if you are working for a 135 operator, like Jet Suite or NetJets, there's not really, to my understanding, hey, you have to fly this amount of time, unless you're upgrading for captain. So if you're in a 135 operator, your IOE could be, if you're amazing, and it's really not likely, but it could essentially be 1 day, or it could be 2 weeks, it could be a month, depending on how you're doing, right? So it just depends. Once all that's over, said and done, and you're done with type rating, you're officially a line guy, right? And now you're flying the line just like everybody else. If you come to Jet Suite, you're going to be on the line immediately. If you go to other airlines, you're probably going to be on reserve for a little bit. But yeah, that's pretty much how it flows, how it goes, and that's the way we roll. So if you guys have any questions about how this process works, let me know. And I'll try to get back to you guys as soon as I can. We got another video coming up. Hopefully it's posted today or tomorrow. I don't know. Not like today or tomorrow, meaning when you're watching the video. But hopefully another video is coming up soon about just giving you guys a little progress update on what I've been doing lately. To kind of give you guys a little, see what's going on. But yeah, we're going to knock this video out. It's been about 21 minutes, 32 seconds. It's been a long video. I'm sorry, guys. But yeah, I hope this helped you out. And if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know. Remember, if you guys have questions that you want to ask me directly or personally, you can hit me up on Instagram. My Instagram is Juliet Alpha Yankee Charlie Alpha Yankee Niner JK99 JAYCAY 99 Instagram. Alright, hit me up. Follow me, I'll follow you back. Hit up my inbox, answer guys' questions. Sometimes it takes me a while, but I will get back to you. Anyways, guys, I'll talk to you next time. And yeah, thanks for watching.